Tony Kim, welcome to the Reluctant Somm podcast.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. I'm so excited.
Some of your finest mezcal. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. Well, you know, I've always enjoyed. We can dive into just a quick tangent because I'm obviously awful at tangents, but I've always enjoyed. There was a lot of things that I didn't enjoy about the court, and I was only level 1. So if anybody hears me bagging on it, I'm not some high up that decided to leave, but like I always appreciated about the court and the Wine and Spirit Education Trust that there was a focus on other things besides just wine.
Absolutely.
You're a beverage professional.
Yes.
Like, yes, wine is the emphasis, but you're a beverage professional. And I always thought that was really cool. Needing to know some esoteric recipe from the 1930s, don't really feel is like required, but that's okay. You know,
No, that's okay. No, I mean, it's good though. You can't be siloed in this day and age.
That's true.
I mean, well, first you're missing out on so much stuff if you only focus on one type of beverage alcohol.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I mean, there is no, we've read over and over again these days, there are no exclusively wine program people anymore.
Not anymore.
Right? Like even at the highest end restaurants, the state of the industry is that a restaurant can't sustain that economically.
Right.
Like, you know, even at the highest echelons. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you're a wine director, you're already a beverage director at that point pretty much. And if you're not actually on the floor helping out with service or doing some sort of marketing or something like that, it's a really easy cost to cut as an owner. So, yeah, you need to know everything.
At my last general sales meeting, we talked about that. We talked about the consolidation of roles within restaurants, right? And you start looking at like, you know, the cost of minimum wage is going up. It's going up in July, right? They're talking about getting rid of, what are they calling them? Junk tax, junk fees?
Junk fees, yeah.
Talking about getting rid of the junk fees, right? So look, the cost of goods is increasing. Everything is increasing, right? So the buck has to get passed somewhere.
Absolutely.
It's getting passed to the consumer, which is how businesses work, right? So I have no qualms with that. But I think what we're seeing is that that a business can look at their expenses and go like, oh, I can either not pay rent or get a different location, which is not a real option. I can get shittier quality ingredients or products, or I can cut labor. I mean, any time I've ever worked in a restaurant, that's the answer. The answer is always cut labor, cut labor, cut labor. It's slow, cut people, right? You just do their job for them.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the great unspoken there is that if you're a manager, you get to do every single job in the house for your generally lower salary, which is not an hourly rate. So no matter how long you're there, no matter what you're doing, you're getting paid that base rate. You know, and luckily, and maybe by choice, I've tried to avoid those positions.
Yeah.
You know, specifically, well, maybe not specifically for that reason, but that's always a consideration.
With experience comes wisdom.
Yeah. And, you know, and I've gotten really lucky throughout my career in that I have been able to grow and learn in the industry while not actually being paid as a manager.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But while still getting the fun of choosing the wines.
While still getting the fun of choosing the wines.
That's the dream.
Yes.
That's really like having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were there were a few of us back in the heyday of San Francisco. Well, I mean, arguably the heyday of San Francisco wine and spirits. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And so, yeah, we are facing the great unknown as we have to cut junk fee, quote unquote, junk fees.
Yeah.
And everyone needs to sort of do that complicated math and figure out what the consumer is willing to pay, what's a good deal. And honestly, I mean, it's really hard to not see it from both sides. You know, we see it every day because we're out there going to restaurants.
In the streets.
Seeing. I would venture to say that we probably eat out more than most people. Most industry people eat out more than non-industry people. You know, so we're reaping the benefit of those fees, and service charges and all that stuff. But we also see it when we go out and we have to pay that.
Yeah.
I mean, the family and I, for spring break, we went to the Mid-Atlantic, East Coast, going out to eat in Philly, DC. DC was higher, as you might imagine. It's a big city,
right?
Nation's capital. Costs of dining out were fairly equivalent.
Okay.
Philly was cheap. It was crazy. We were sitting there going and, eating out and thinking, okay, this is good. And then the bill comes and they're like, let's eat again.
Yeah. We'll do another set.
Yeah.
Bring it all back.
Just the same stuff, man.
That's so funny.
But, yeah, I mean, and then you go to, Asia. Last summer we went to Korea and Japan, and it costs a lot to get there.
Yeah.
But then once you're there, the food is cheap and it's good
and probably way better for you.
Yeah. And and there is no expectation of tipping and all that stuff. And I totally understand it when you hear people from other countries come here and say, "What do you mean the sign that said that? What do you mean that it costs more than what it actually said on the tag in the store?"
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're charging sales tax, we're charging whatever, and
on
everywhere
this side,
else.
SF mandate.
Yeah.
Tax. Yeah. Then tip on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough out there. And, not to come down on either side or anything, but, you can definitely see where there's frustration building up in the dining public because, you see the menu price and then you go, okay, I should basically just add 50% to that because that's probably what it's going to come out to.
Yeah.
After tax and tip and everything. And I don't know that everyone's necessarily doing that, which is where the disconnect is.
Yeah. And that's why when you get your tab, you go like, how?
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Brandy and I used to make the joke, like even with the kids, like we would go, even without the kids, we would go out and be like, we're good for about 100 a person.
Yeah.
No matter how cheap the restaurant is, we're good for about 100
just
a person.
Just expect to spend it.
Yeah. And then after that, it's just...
Yeah. I mean, it's really crazy. I mean, we went out, I'm trying to even remember and my brain's just totally fogged right now, but we went out the other morning, got 2 coffees and split a pastry and it was $22. It's like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's a lot.
When is this bubble going to pop? Like, when are we going to hit the ceiling? Right. Because it feels like we're getting there and, maybe for the better, right? We're eating at home more. Mm-hmm. We're not going out as much. But, who is that impacting? It's not impacting the people that are making the policies. It's impacting the people in our environment, in our ecosystem, right?
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden it becomes like this unattainable thing to go out more than once a week, every other week, once a month for some people. Mm-hmm. And, you're just like sitting there like, I mean, I've really enjoyed cooking at home more. But I don't feel like I'm doing my part. It's like giving back. It's again
supporting the industry. Yeah.
When I die, bury me in the earth, and let the earthworms consume me. Right. Let me become part of nature. Right?
Some great tree springing out.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. If it comes from me, it'll just be like a weed. It'll be some fucked up, or maybe it'll be a grapevine.
Yeah,
that's my dream.
That would be amazing. That's something that can sustain a whole ecosystem.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a step back. So Tony Kim, for our listeners, I have known you for 6 years. We met.
Is that it?
It's been that long, and it has only been that long.
Yeah. It's a good
So,
relationship. I feel the same way about my wife.
Yeah, good. That's great.
It's like I feel like I've known you forever, and yet not.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's beautiful. I mean, at least you're not tired of me. Not yet.
No.
I mean, the night's still young.
But for that, there's mezcal.
That's right. And wine. So you and I met 6 years ago.
Yes.
We were working at 8 Tables by George Chen together, which is a Chinese tasting menu.
Yes.
Which was really cool. Very new concept for me. I don't feel like there's a lot of them in general. Mm-hmm. And in a city, there's a couple? Well, a few now.
A couple now, yeah.
Yeah. And then before that, you had worked at. Now you're on the sales side.
Now I'm on the sales side. Yes.
And prior to that, you had worked at the Clift.
Yes.
And then that's really all I know. I mean,
that's really all there is, honestly. I mean, I looked into, like I said, I have, as I repeatedly tell people, I have been blessed.
Yeah.
I feel, for those of you who believe in that stuff,
sure.
I have really led a charmed life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I fell into the hospitality industry sort of by accident, sort of by requirement. You when you don't have a job and you need to make money,
that's right.
That's where a lot of people go, and I just happened to be. Okay, so first off, unemployed. Figured, all right, I'll go bartend somewhere. I got a job on Fisherman's Wharf. Pier 39.
Sure.
Wonderful place. A lot of regulars. A lot of tourists. A lot of tourists who, as we were talking about, did not understand the nature of tipping or the existence of tipping or the necessity of tipping. And so, was looking to get out of there fairly soon after that. And just happened to, I can't even remember how it was. I think maybe my roommate saw an ad advertising or something that the Clift was hiring. And, when I had first moved to the city, I had actually gone into there because of some friend was going to some alumni event or something that was held at the Redwood Room. And this was back right before the smoking ban was enacted.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was 96, I guess.
Shit.
Yeah, I feel that was before the smoking ban was enacted. Anyway, I remember going in, and there was just a cloud of cigar smoke, just like a cloud. And you would actually have to sit down in the chairs to get down below it.
Right.
And, fun, whatever. And they ended up redoing it. It was bought by Ian Traeger Hotels. And they redid it, and they were opening, and they were hiring, and I went and applied, and I got hired to work in Asia to Cuba.
Cool.
Which was at the time a fairly hot restaurant. It started in New York and then eventually spread to here, LA, London, and then Miami also, sort of way into the history. But I got in on the ground floor. I was part of the opening team for the restaurant. When the restaurant closed, I moved into the Redwood Room.
What was your position? Server?
Bartender.
Bartender.
Yeah, started off as a service bartender.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so never interacted with the public.
Right.
I was in the back just cranking out drinks.
Oh, the service. Yes, so you were like in the kitchen in like a little room.
In a service bar.
They're firing tickets. Yeah. You're just putting stuff up. And
I mean, the bones of the hotel, it was formerly the French Room and the Redwood Room. And so Asia to Cuba took over that space, and they had a service bar. Because, God forbid, there be bartenders in the French Room.
Right.
And it was really interesting. And when we opened, it was so busy. Like ridiculously busy. Like it was a service bar designed for one, and we frequently had 3 or 4 guys in there cranking out drinks, and we were not slow.
Right.
None of us were slow.
Yeah.
And that's how the business level was. Wow. And it was crazy. And then to give you some context, we opened up in August of 2001.
Okay.
So for a month, it was gangbusters, crazy, holy crap. And then obviously September 11th.
Yep.
And then, there was a slowdown. There was like the weird, every's freaked out and nobody knows what's happening.
Yep. Avoid major cities.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for my family.
And sort of like with the pandemic as well. You know, that first month was like, what's going on?
No air travel. Yeah.
And then it all came rushing back again.
Yeah.
So busy. It's just crazy. And so, and I was still pretty new to bartending at that point, and we were just cranking. I mean, I feel like if you can arrange that, that's a great way to learn on the fly. Is if you have the recipes and stuff down and you can crank. I mean, you don't have to interact with people.
Trial by fire.
You are just making the drinks.
Yeah.
And if you can get a job where you're sort of eased into interacting with the public. I mean, it's really easy to grow that way, and so we had a great management team. Wine education was huge from day one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where we are in the industry too. It's like when I look back, one of my regrets is that I didn't do more mentoring myself when I was put into a position of leadership. Now, it's not like I didn't do that,
right?
But when I look back and how much educational budget we had back then, and maybe that's why the restaurant closed eventually. But and it all comes back to the economics of it, right? It's like, well,
I need to know if this goes well with my dinner every night,
right?
For 5 nights.
Well, no, I mean, and literally, we were popping a bottle every night.
That's so cool.
Something in a different bottle every night.
Sure.
And we would work through the wine list. Yeah. And, and it wasn't like, at that time, the most expensive bottle on the list was like $400.
Yeah.
Excluding like Cristal and Dom and all that stuff. And even Dom back then would have been like $300, $400. As opposed to now, when it like wholesales for that much.
It's so brutal.
Anyway, it's so we were going through every bottle from the $9 glass BTGs,
so cool,
up to the $100, up to the, I think the most expensive bottle we had was like $200.
Wow.
And so we were trying those every night, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
I know that there are restaurants that still do something like that, but I don't think at that scale and at that pace, it's not.
You get to try the new BTG that's coming on.
Yeah.
Or I just brought this wine in. You tried it pre-shift. There's 10 of you. That's good enough. Just try it.
And then hold on to that bottle so people can try it tomorrow when they come in. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's one of the things I always appreciated about Boulevard is John was always very like forthcoming with information and very forthcoming with like new wines. I remember we got at one point, this is before the pandemic, obviously, he just like pours a wine in a decanter. Everybody passes it around. We all pour it for each other. We all taste it. We're like, fuck, this is really good. And so this is probably end of 2019, early 2020. And we all taste it. And it's 2012 Carte Blanche Pinot Noir. And he's going to put it on the menu for $100. And we're like, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? Right? Easy sale.
Yeah.
And so it was so great for us to be able to like taste the wine because there's not often like, especially working with a list that deep that you get to.
Exactly.
Where do you start? Like, how do you scratch the surface? And, like for you, you've been there for 2 years at this point and you've tasted through these 50 wines. Well, when the new kids come on board, you're not going to start over. Right. So they're only going to get to taste half or whatever by the time they get to the end of their time there, or you get to your end of the time there. It's always cyclical.
Yeah. You start where you start.
Yeah.
And you can only go through what gets pulled out. Right. And so, yeah.
And how many facings did you have on the menu at that time?
Oh, in Asia Cuba?
A ballpark, sorry. You don't have to.
150.
That's still impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a single sheet. It started off as like a single sheet list. Sparkling whites, rosés, and then one column of reds. Broken up stylistically, which at the time I feel like was sort of forward thinking.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, a lot about that, the restaurant group. Asia to Cuba is part of China Grill management. And somehow I keep on working for places that have China in the name. China Grill management, they really, the senior people really had their shit together.
That's awesome.
Yes, let me break the swearing seal.
Yeah,
so
good.
They had their shit together.
Have more mezcal. It'll happen more frequently.
And when I look back at it, opening up property after property, at that point they were in their expansion mode.
Yeah.
They were opening up lots of really hot restaurants. But the education was there. I mean, That's great. Trained for a full month before we opened.
Holy
Who
shit.
spends the money to pay all their staff for a month?
I guarantee you the minimum wage was still more than what they're paying in Texas today.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, and so the other thing is, the other way I lucked out was back in those days, and still, Clift was part of the multi-employer group, which is a consortium of all the big hotels and unions around Union Square and in the city, and so it was a union job.
Okay.
And so our minimum, our wage was the minimum wage now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
With tips back then. With healthcare and so yes, boys and girls, unions do work for you.
Well, I was gonna say we should have a conversation after this podcast is over because I have a couple questions. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously all the hotel chains hate it.
I'm sure that in a lot of ways it's frustrating, but like, you know what, at the end of the day, like it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Somebody thinks it's a good idea. And somebody signed up for it and stays doing it. Yeah. Right. So there's a reason that it exists.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Prisoner exists because people drink Prisoner. Right.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you and I think about it.
Yes.
All that matters is that it exists because people drink it.
Yes.
Right. And it's like McDonald's. Whether you think McDonald's is shitty or not, McDonald's still makes lots of money because people still consume it.
It fills a need.
Yeah.
And people will support, and that, and people will support what they feel satisfies their needs. Right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, McDonald's is a great example. I just read an article about how, McDonald's and other fast food places have been raising their prices to match the rise of wages or cost of goods and all that stuff. And they have seen a pullback in consumer support.
Wow.
Yes. So they too are feeling the pinch of higher prices and inflation, the economy, higher wages, etc. And so now they are coming out with lower priced options.
Wow. That's
to
really
sort of reclaim that space. Yeah, we'll see how it all goes from here.
That's good to know.
It all feels like it's inching forward inexorably to some sort of like point of no return, right? But at this point, something's going to happen. I
mean, I feel like we're seeing a little bit of rollback in a lot of different scenarios, right? Like the first thing that comes to mind is Burgundy, right?
Yes.
Domaine Drouin made a statement and just like, I haven't seen any other Burgundy houses doing it, but Domaine Drouin made a statement and was like, we're dropping our prices. We had a good yield. We're going to drop our prices, right? Or we can't sell it.
Right.
We're going to drop our prices. And I've seen a lot of other wineries that used to raise their price by, at that price range, there's a wine I'm thinking of specifically that wholesales at the $855 price. It hasn't raised its price in 2 years, but prior to that, it was raising its price by, like 3% or 4%, which maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're at $800,
yes,
it's a significant increase.
Yes.
But it's nice to at least see some plateau in most cases, and also to see like a little bit of back turn in some ways. Yeah. And the other day we had another guest and we were talking about their concept that they work for. It's a group, and it's a relatively casual group, and they're doing really well. While fine dining restaurants are suffering, or not suffering, but are noticing less business.
Yeah.
Because I won't use a blanket term like they're all suffering. We're seeing kind of that more commodity concept do well, and we were talking about like percentages of sales, and percentages of sales are down, but volume of sales remain the same.
Yeah.
Right. So your dollar sign is lower, but you're selling just as much. And all I can think is, I'm just glad to know that people are drinking as much wine, right?
But then that opens up the whole other thing. Yeah. I mean, it feels like there's just a nonstop rain of bad news for the wine industry,
or hail
writ large.
Cases.
Well, yes, and
sorry,
hail.
Chablis.
It's you. Yeah. Oh man, that's rough.
That's so horrible.
And it's so predictable, right? I mean, it's 3
point.
out of every 10 years. Now it might be 5 out of every 10 years.
And, let's knock on wood about a fire here sometime soon, right?
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
we've had a couple good years, so.
Just
terrifying.
Just more vegetation to feed the field.
Oh my God,
fuel the fire
stop.
later.
Don't tell me.
Yes.
Don't do it to me.
Yeah, it's so people are drinking less, right?
Yeah.
And the current new generation of drinkers. Many of them aren't drinking at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Esther Mobley with the Chronicle wrote what I thought was a really nice piece about how people are just drinking less wine.
Yeah.
And, anecdotally, I would say I've definitely seen the effects of that, as a seller of wine.
Yeah.
Or as a wholesaler of wine, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the demand fluctuates. I feel like what's true in the wine industry is also true in the restaurant industry. Now, I feel like the lowest end and the highest end are what's fairly stable
Right
now.
Yeah.
If you're a hot ticket, you're high dollar tasting menu, and more importantly, an experiential dining
exclusivity.
I mean that's so that whole thing. I mean, if you are a restaurant, special occasion restaurant, weddings, birthdays, graduations, all that. You're gonna keep on having those people coming in because there's always going to be somebody who wants to celebrate like that. And if they have to save up a whole year to do it, then so be it.
Then they will.
Yeah. And then for restaurants of last resort, right?
Yeah.
Then you have that tier at the bottom end. In San Francisco, especially, the rise of counter service restaurants.
Yep.
Cutting costs wherever they can, getting rid of as much labor as possible.
It's a new place I just saw that closed and is like, we're reopening in 3 months for a more casual concept. It was already a casual concept, but and I found the owner. I said, "What are you opening as?" It's counter service.
Yeah. Gonna have one person in the kitchen, one person in the counter, and
woof. I mean, good on them.
Yeah, if that's what want. Well, and if that's what it takes to survive,
that's true
at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, cost of goods is ridiculously higher than it was. Rent never goes down for a restaurant.
For anybody in the city.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
a bit.
Yeah, you see reports about
we just need another pandemic.
Yeah.
God, please no.
Yikes. Yeah. Yeah, those costs aren't going down. No. And so everybody feels that pinch equally, but then restaurants, they can't raise more money. They can't raise their prices more. No. And then with the junk fees going away, they're going to have to raise their prices.
Yep.
And so there's going to be a lot of sticker shock. I think that first 6 months after the junk fees get repealed or outlawed, then you're going to see sort of a bloodbath of restaurants that try to make it and just cannot without drastically altering how they do business.
Was it Mobley just released another write-up? Somebody just released a write-up and called this a mass extinction event.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of those terms bandied about, and sadly enough, I don't think that's overstating it.
I don't know, man. I have hope, right? Like, we have several conventions in town. Mm-hmm. Tourism is trending back.
I saw a bunch of tourists out today.
Yeah.
Just obvious tourists are back. Yeah. When you drive down the street or walk down the street and you look and you go, oh, they are definitely not from here.
Yeah, exactly. They don't look like they're constantly looking over their shoulder.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. I think, I don't know. I have hope. I feel like it's only a matter of time. Uh-huh. And I feel like whatever it's going to take, we're going to have to figure it out. And it's going to be painful. It's been painful.
Yes.
But I feel like that's the point. Like, if it's already been painful, like, another thing, I don't think is going to, it will demoralize us, but I don't think it'll be, like, the killing blow. Mm-hmm. I feel like the industry in San Francisco is on the ropes, but I don't feel like it's on the mat. So.
I agree. I think this town is full of a lot of resilient people.
Yeah.
And, if history has taught us anything about this town, it's that we're really good at rising from the ashes. Hopefully it doesn't actually take everything burning down hopefully it's not a full Phoenix type of moment.
Yeah.
But, there are a lot of smart people out there.
Yeah.
A lot of people doing really cool, interesting things. And unfortunately, we're at the point where people are going to have to do cool, interesting things to sort of get over the obstacles that are currently in the path. But yeah, I am also hopeful.
it's like evolution. There's going to be a lot of different offshoots, a lot of like really interesting developments, a lot of like really cool things that'll branch off into their own versions of that species or whatever. The fast casual will branch off into its own species, and you'll see a couple different mutations, and depending on where they are in the city, I'm sure will be its own thing as well.
Yeah.
It's like forced growth, right? Like hardship breeds enlightenment. It's kind of, I think, where we're at. I hope it's not where we're at, but I think that's the hope on if we get to that point.
Yes. I mean, yeah, you talk about necessity being the mother of invention.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It feels like things are necessary.
Well, we've taken a dark turn.
Yeah, I mean, that, which is so normal for a conversation with me. But
no, I don't feel like that.
I feel like we get serious though.
We get serious, but I don't feel like it's necessarily negative.
No,
I'm okay with serious. No. Serious is good. Yeah.
We think deep thoughts.
We need serious. That's the only way it's going to get better. We have to think about it. We have to talk about it. We have to have discourse.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, one of the main impetus to start the podcast is to spread. So, like, our target audience is people in the service industry, people that are interested in wine, people that are in the wine industry at large, sales, whatever.
Yeah.
Basically, anybody that will listen, really. But I think, to me, like, what I'd loved is to help open people's eyes to thinking about things from a different aspect. And that's why we're not focused on just winemakers or just salespeople or just somms or just wine retailers.
Yes.
We want to really just kind of like encompass everything. Hotel folks. We want to encompass servers, whoever wants to come on. We'll try to make room for them and try to give them an opportunity to come on. We're a little inundated at this point, which is a good thing.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about it. It's the only way it's going to get better. If you ignore it, it's not going to go away.
Exactly.
So, okay. So let's think. So you basically worked at the Cliff.
Oh, for
forever.
17 years.
Yeah, that's
it's a whole. It's like many lifetimes.
So
as a bartender.
Impressive. Yeah, well, especially in the restaurant lifespan of like 2 years max.
Yeah. I mean, Asia to Cuba burned bright for. It closed after 11 years. Burned bright for probably 9 of them.
That's so cool.
It's great, and it was controversial when it opened. I mean, just the renovation of the hotel itself was controversial. Everything about it was controversial. Brought a little bit. I think one of the knocks on it was that it was a little slice of LA in San Francisco.
Sure.
CNBC and all that good stuff. But but people loved it.
Yeah.
And honestly, for as much as people sort of knocked the food, Asia to Cuba, what an interesting concept. It's Cuban Asian fusion, and people thought it was fake. And it's like, but there is actually a history of, Chinese immigrants in Cuba making food, Chinese techniques based, using the ingredients that were there.
Dude, what's blowing up right now is the whole Nikkei thing.
Yeah,
the Peruvian Japanese thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
People have immigrated.
Yes.
There's fusion cuisine, right?
Yeah.
I love
and there always has been. As long as two cultures get together, the food is soon to follow.
Yep. Have you ever been to Over the Bridge in Japantown?
Yes.
Oh my God, I love going and getting Japanese spaghetti. It's so cool.
Okay, so I can't join you with that. Sure. But I do like the place, just not that.
Right? Yeah. No. I don't often order that, but I do love the idea that there are options for you to order things like that, because that's a thing. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of people that I know that have been to Japan, and they're like, the thing to do in Japan is to try other cultures' cuisines in Japan
through the Japanese lens.
That's awesome. I mean, we see that here. We talk about tasting menus, and I've had this conversation in, I think, in different rooms than this room, and it's about how French wine is kind of seeing a little bit of a slump, at least in my eyes, and I think that part of that has to do with the fact that many restaurants are moving away from traditional French techniques in favor of Japanese techniques, right? We have incredible high quality ingredients. We no longer need to confit things. We no longer need to braise things.
Yeah.
We no longer need to cook things forever to infuse flavor or to make them tender, right? now we have high quality ingredients. We're very coastal. We're very seafood driven and vegetable driven. I mean, it bonds really well to Japanese cuisine.
It does.
And I'm loving it. I mean, it does make it a little harder to kind of target wines sometimes because, with less complexity, sometimes you would think it makes it a much broader scope to pair things with, but it in fact makes it more challenging.
Much more challenging. Yeah. You have to actually nail the flavors, and there's fewer things to sort of pair off or complement or contrast. And,
yeah.
Delicacy is difficult.
Speaking on that, I wanted to kind of pick your brain, I guess, a little bit on this. So you and I worked together at 8 Tables by George Chen. Yes. And I was talking to Henro the other day, who's taken over the program. And, the chef has changed. The cuisine remains similar. It's a little different. And the pairing that he's doing is really interesting. He's talking about kind of like tasting two wines, most of it side by side. And he'll do like Chardonnay from Burgundy, Chardonnay from California. Or he'll do like, the same grape from two regions, or the same wine and winery from two different vintages, or something kind of fun and interesting like that.
That's awesome.
I love it. But I remember when you and I were there, I mean, it was very Chinese.
Yes.
And the food, some of the food items were a little off the wall. And it was also at the time, I think they've now introduced several different options for the tasting menu length. But at the time, it was extensive.
It was long, yeah.
It was 11 courses, 13 courses, something like that.
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be 8, and there's always the minior D's and this and that, and multiple iterations, and
So one of the things that I want to talk about, because we're talking about Asia de Cuba and we're talking about pairing, it kind of parallels into this, I think, a little bit, is like, what were your thoughts when you were trying to pair with a cuisine like that? Because I'm writing these wine reviews, and they're like very like my preference wine reviews. They're not like, I'm highly educated, I'm a MS, listen to me talk about wine. I'm not that level, but I'm writing these wine reviews and I'm doing like suggested pairings, and it's been challenging for me to like kind of think out of the box and not just go to classics.
Yep.
What was it like you were the first wine guy there.
Yes.
What was it like trying to build a wine pairing program around heavily authentic Chinese cuisine?
Well, that's the rub, isn't it? Well, first off, I considered it a challenge.
Right.
As I think a deep honor. I mean, it's one of those things. It's at the time, at least here. I mean, I know that it's been done, and especially to hear George talk, there were people doing things like that in China, which you would expect because, that's your food. If you want an elevated experience, that's what you're doing.
Right.
But to have that here, and George did drive most of this because he was like, part of what I want to do is show that Chinese cuisine can be paired with the greatest of great wines.
Yeah.
And so when we were pulling stuff out of his cellar to put on the list, going through our various sources to source these great, first growth Bordeaux's and Grand Cru Burgundies and all the, the stuff that dreams are made of as far as putting together a wine list.
The bottles.
Yeah. I mean, those, the iconic bottles.
Yeah.
Obviously you're not using your one bottle of Cheval, 47 Cheval Blanc to pair.
I wonder if this goes with the Wagyu supplement.
Yeah, this would be awesome for that one table or, one night of tables.
Right.
So you're making those decisions for me, it was based on dominant flavors. And it's, the way I always have tried to pair with cuisine is that it's not even necessarily the dominant flavor, but the flavor that I feel like would give the wine the hardest time.
Right.
So sweetness is always a killer.
Right.
And, we had some sweet.
Yeah.
And, that the 9 flavors thing was, that's a nightmare to pair, which is why it's champagne. It sort of has to be because it's just so so flexible across so many different things.
So diverse.
Yeah. I mean, and other than sweet, I would say that usually brut champagne does really well across all that stuff. But yeah, I was usually looking for the dominant flavors. If there's a sweet, if there's a pronounced sweet note, if there's a pronounced fruity note, just whatever the most obvious thing is. And then you sort of go, well, I'm also getting hints of green or this and that. So instead of a Chardonnay, we should do a Sauvignon Blanc. We should do something like this, some sort of, Trocken Riesling or, with the meat dishes, then you start incorporating tannin with the acid.
Right.
And one of my favorite things that we learned in the process of doing all those pairings is that, classically from a Western perspective, whenever you have heat in food, you're trying to add sugar or fruitiness, something to sort of tone down the heat. So you're looking for a low oak, low alcohol, high fruity red. Something like that. And then to talk to someone from China or a Chinese person who's very frequently pairing, to know that in China, what they're doing is doing the exact opposite and trying to find something that will dial up the heat even further. That's super interesting.
Tannin and spice.
Yeah, tannin and spice. And alcohol. Let's blow it out. Let's do something from the Southern Rhone. Let's get Grenache at its ripest, and let's, high fruit. Oak is still, not always a great pairing, especially with that food. But high alcohol and high fruit. Man, yeah, let's crank up the heat and let's pull it all out. I mean, that's really fun for me. Not everything needs to be paired with a sweet Riesling.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that becomes the catch-all, right? It's like, I shared this meme the other day, and it was like, wine pairing suggestion. It was like, every food on earth, Riesling.
Yes.
It was like, it's perfect.
Which is true to a certain extent.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you could make that argument for champagne as well.
Sure.
And obviously a lot of that same characteristic, But that was my favorite thing. I mean, Evan Goldstein, Master Somm extraordinaire, and also San Francisco or Bay Area resident, wrote 2 books. One was called Perfect Pairings, and the other one was, oh, wow, I can't even remember. I'm going to bring it up and not remember both titles. But it's some perfect pairings and some other pairings. And they were all about, how to approach pairing food with wine.
Yeah.
It was like, ooh.
There you go.
Yeah, let's not spill that. And that's fantastic. And then and I can't remember if it's Alder. I think it's Alder Yarrow, who is the blogger Vinography. He says that there is no such thing as pairing wine with food. There's no classical synergy between wine and food. Yeah, it's not. There's you can have wine with food. It can be complementary, but there is no such thing as pairing wine with food. These are polar opposite visions, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like he's saying,
don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah.
But, he's,
don't
what I gather from what he's saying is that, you shouldn't be looking for that perfect thing. There's that, it's what you want to drink with what you're eating and vice versa.
And who you're with.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of the problem is that so much of it is subjective and based on more than just the meal and the wine.
Yeah.
Atmosphere matters. Your state of mind matters. Company is huge.
Super.
Yeah.
The weather.
I mean, everything. I mean, I used to go to tastings, industry tastings, walking around, and the secret weapon is Sudafed, right? Because on any given day, the nose is just not working.
Yeah.
And God, this year with seasonal allergies, the pollen has been
really hard.
It's been crazy.
Yeah.
And so, I would pop Sudafed before tastings, especially the big ones. But, and man, does that work.
That's great. That's a good tip. That's the insider tip.
Yeah. And I'm talking the real Sudafed, the pseudoephedrine stuff that they put your name on a list.
Yeah.
Not the phenylephrine stuff that has been proven not to work.
Yeah,
that you can just pick up off the rack.
Yeah. That's funny.
But pairing is an inexact science.
Yeah.
Or not even science. It's art at its finest, and other than that, it's just providing a drink with your food.
Yeah,
at its worst.
Well, I think that's it. You nailed it, right? And I think when you go to a pairing menu, or you go to a tasting menu, I think for the general person, it's more an experience than it is like I just need to eat. I'm just hungry. I'm going to go to a 3-star.
Yeah, food is
I just
fuel.
need to eat. Yeah, exactly. So, at that scale, especially when you're getting a wine pairing, I think you're just kind of like a blank slate. You know, we went to a 2-star at one point and we got like beer with the pairing. And I was like, well, this is kind of cool. It was an expensive pairing.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like a little like, I wish that maybe this.
We did that a few times.
Well, right. Our pairing was less than this pairing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah.
And I love to think kind of outside the box. And I know that a lot of restaurants, speaking on like the Japanese influence coming into many restaurants nowadays, a lot of places are pouring like sake and stuff to pair with their courses. I mean, we went to the only tasting menu place that we've been to in the last year plus, and they were pouring a sake that was great. And it was perfect with the cuisine. And I love being able to kind of think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that 9 flavors. So the 9 flavors, for anybody that's listening, which is nobody right now because we're recording for the future.
Yes.
In the future me and future Tony and all the other listeners, the 9 flavors at 8 tables was kind of like the signature dish. It still is the signature dish. It's kind of the statement piece.
Yeah, and it's the opener.
Yeah, it's like the amuse-bouche.
Yep.
But it's like 9 amuse-bouche.
Yes.
And I don't think I can name all of them still.
Especially
not the Chinese. Especially not the Chinese.
Yeah, not the Chinese. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Sweet, salty, bitter.
Sweet, salty,
sour.
bitter, sour, spicy, numbing, tingling, smoky. I think I got 8. I don't know.
Yeah. I can't remember.
Yeah, but either way, it was really cool. It's beautiful. I would recommend going if you have time and you have the money available to you. It's still really cool. But yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, the best thing that could have happened is that came at the beginning, and the best way to start the tasting is with bubbles.
Yeah.
Right?
It's bubbles are usually an opener.
Right.
And it just happens to work really well with most of those flavors, and that's great. So
where did we leave off? We left off with pairing wine with incredibly difficult choices. I always thought that was one of the most criminal things about when I'd worked at Ozumo on Embarcadero, a Japanese restaurant. I remember maybe I'll move my mic closer. Checking 1, 2. I remember before I left, I got a wild hair at my house, and I just like, I'm going to do a champagne special for the whole month of December.
Oh,
and
a good choice for the month too.
And I reached out to Kermit Lynch, and I set up a tasting, and I hadn't done a ton of business with them. I mean, it was post-pandemic. A lot of reps weren't out. There wasn't a lot of reps. It was a different world, so not saying that anybody was doing anything wrong. And I tried J. LaSalle, and I tried, I'm totally spacing. It's a B. They're a part of the special club. Not Barat. Not Baroche.
Oh, part of the special club.
Paul Barra.
Oh, yeah, Barra.
Sorry, yeah. So I got some Paul Barra. There was something I got from Atherton that was awesome.
Yeah.
Right, and I only picked up 5. I picked up 5 new champagnes.
Okay, yeah.
I offered J. LaSalle Cachet d'Or by the glass.
Yep.
And then I put them on at like a 2.5 time markup or 2 time markup, depending on the price, which is, standard at a high level price bottle. And then I, did a little bit of a deal on a lot of the other bubbles on our program. So we had like 10 sparklings with great options. And I was also trying to make the plan foolproof. So I put like menu insert or menu clip-ons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put it in every menu, and I made sure it was in every menu, and I didn't sell shit, Tony.
Really?
I didn't sell shit. It's Japanese food. And yeah, we had Wagyu, right?
Yeah.
So like, I'll give it that. Maybe you don't want to drink Wagyu, eat Wagyu and drink champagne.
Which is...
It would be fine.
It would be awesome.
It would be great, right?
Depending on the champagne. But
yes. All the sushi,
yeah,
the karage,
yeah.
We had fried maitake mushrooms, like tempura fried maitake mushrooms. We had so many incredible things that would go well with champagne. And I couldn't sell it. And it was so challenging. It was so difficult.
So interesting to me.
And, there's other places in San Francisco specifically that are Japanese restaurants that I know also have a little bit of a tough time selling champagne.
Yeah, I think it's...
Or bubbles in general.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of a... How do I put this? It's not a cultural sensitivity issue so much, but there is some of that. It'd be like, sure. I'm eating sushi. I'm eating Japanese food, so right. I should be eating it with... A native beverage, so
sure,
sake or even beer, right?
You're right.
Right? But then I think, there's enough sushi snobs in this city that I think might consider champagne to be overkill.
Sure.
Just the acidity, the bubbles.
Sure.
Which is not to say it doesn't have its place.
Tony,
and,
let me get my feelings hurt, Tony. Let me get my feelings hurt, please.
Yeah. But all the fried food, come on, you gotta have champagne for that.
Yeah. No, you bring up valid points, and I think that's one of the things that was always really interesting to see. But I also think it captured more drinks sold because we had more options, right? Mm-hmm. Having that sake component is something that I think is really interesting. You go to a place like Ungrafted is a great example. Mm-hmm. They have a wonderful selection of non-alcoholic options. They have a large selection of beers. They have a large selection of sake. They have obviously lots of wine. Mm. And I always thought that was really cool. And, you even go to other places like, what's it called? The one out on Clement Street that's been there for a long time. Sick wine place.
Palm City?
No.
That's not a long time, though.
No, it's called, it's not Fool's Errand. Fool's Errand's on Divisadero.
Oh, High Treason?
High Treason, thank you. And High Treason always has like 2 or 3 sake by the glass as well. Yeah. Which I think is super cool, especially Den Sake. If I get a sponsor, please sponsor me, Den Sake.
Nice. Okay.
No, our local Bay Area sake brewery.
Yeah.
Well, not the only one, I guess. In Berkeley, there's Gekikan or whatever, right? But
Sequoia, and there's all sorts.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Well, not all sorts of.
There's more than one.
There is more than one.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really want to try. There's this Arizona one sake.
Dude,
have you tasted it?
No, but it sticks in. Okay, so Brandy and I did a cross country driving road trip,
right?
And we went through Arizona. We went through the very city. I believe it was Holcomb in Arizona, where this sake brewery is. Yeah. We went 2 years too early. It didn't open up until after we'd already done this trip. And so I'm reading, it was in a magazine. It was like, Food and Wine or Imbibe or something like that. Yeah. And I read about it and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Where are they? Holcomb. We drove through Holcomb.
That's so funny.
And so, I would have loved to have gone in there. Not that I don't think that they were really doing tours or anything at the time.
Probably not.
But just the concept of this Japanese guy starting a sake brewery in the middle of the desert.
Somebody's got to do it, I guess.
Yeah. Because that seems antithetical to sake production. Everything about sake is
water.
Moisture.
Water
it's moisture
so
management.
Moisture, you're right.
It's just moisture management, humidity, like all of that from the koji production to the. Everything is about moisture management. And cleanliness. But it's just crazy to me that is where.
He's gotten a bunch of write-ups.
Yeah, like the finest sake in the U.S.
Gotten a lot of great reviews.
Crazy.
Yeah,
and I want to go so bad.
I want to go. I want to try it. You know who I think has it is Umami Mart. I think they have some.
That would
want to split some. Yeah, let's get some.
Yeah, we'll table that discussion for after.
Yeah. In Berkeley, one of the wines I almost poured you today was. Have you had any of the wines from Nori Nakamura?
Oh, I haven't. I've heard really good things, and I want to. but not necessarily tonight. That's
sure. We the point of that whole tangent was just that I really love that there's a lot of small businesses that are opening, not just in the Bay Area, but just kind of around that are like trying things differently. And I think that's to touch back on the conversation of evolution. I think that's really what we need. I like to always tell this story. This is going to be back into the doom and gloom camp a little bit.
Oh man!
But
I feel like we're just being informed by our circumstance right now.
But I always love to tell this story. It was, post pandemic. I was at Ozumo, and one of my friends, Kayla, set up a trip for us to go to Spotswood, and I was really excited. We went to Spotswood and Pride Mountain in the same day. It was awesome.
Oh, that's
so great,
fun sounding trip. Yeah,
and we went up and we tasted with I'm spacing on her name. She's so sweet. She's been there forever. She's not one of the daughters, but she's been there forever. She's very close with John at Boulevard, and so she had nothing but great things. Tell John this, tell John this, tell John this. It's a small community.
Yes,
it feels like a large community. It's pretty
not.
Small.
It's so small.
And so we went up, and they only have 3 wines. They have Sauvignon Blanc, Lindenhurst, and their estate cab.
Yep.
And I remember we tasted all 3 wines. I'm like, this is awesome, right? And I was thinking, like, I bet they've got some crazy off the wall shit for their wine club members or something.
Right.
Nothing. And then they're showing us the vineyard map, at least not for us.
Right.
And then they're showing us the vineyard map, and there's like a plot of like Cab, Sauv Blanc, the other grapes for the Lindenhurst because it's not 100% Cabernet Sauvignon.
Right.
And then there was like this other area in the vineyard that was like 3 acres, and it was like this slash pattern.
Weird hatch.
And I go like, what's that? And they go, that's our experimental vineyard. And I was like, I got so excited. I go like, oh, what are you growing there? And they're like, heat tolerant varietals. And I was like, fuck.
Smart.
Shoot me down.
Smart but boring. Yeah.
I was like, what are you guys growing? Nebbiolo? And no. They're like, no, we're trying to just hedge our bets for the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. It'll be important to see. And I think like to touch back onto the Chablis conversation is like, if we don't do something about it, nature's going to do something about it.
Yep.
Right. The fires are the same way. The heat is the same way. If there's going to be some old archaic wine law that's not going to allow us to adapt for good reasons, the laws exist for good reasons. I'm not trying to shit on our ancestors or to shit on the predecessors.
They couldn't have foreseen this.
Nobody could.
And even if they could have, yes, in that time, these sites were the best. It is what it was.
You didn't need anything. But my point is that, you have regions like the Wachau moving away from the Federspiel and Schmaragd classifications, or at least the producers are.
Right.
In lieu of the AOP or AOC appellational kind of focus. And I think that's great because now everybody can get ripe. So Schmaragd's not really like as special.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
And the Germans are doing it too, a lot of them. And it's a slow process, but like at least that change is happening. I just hope that we're able to do something about like, I don't know, nets or anything. We'll see. We were doing a Paul Hobbs immersion, and he was talking about the Bromare production that they do in Argentina, and in Luján de Cuyo, which is to the right.
Yes,
the east. They get tons of hail. And that's something that they struggle with all the time. Yeah, because of the low pressure and high pressure of the mountain range, which is really interesting. I was like, do you get hail down there? But I guess they do.
And the plateau and like all or the bench and all that stuff.
Yep. And so they're like, I think they're doing netting, or they have nets in place.
I think they would have
in the event that something happens. And I don't know. I mean, I hope that there's something that we can do. I mean, obviously, like for fires, there's not a lot that we can do. It's not like you can irrigate the vineyards and just be like, they won't burn. They're soaked in water.
Right.
Like, meanwhile, the grapes taste like nothing because they're just completely saturated.
They're soaked with water.
So I don't know. I mean, I think the future of the wine industry sometimes feels bleak, but I feel like it'll always be beautiful because wine's been around for as long as it's been around, and it's only gotten better. And so I think it's just a matter of time. And I think the next phase of evolution, and we talked about the non-drinkers, but I think we'd be remiss to not speak on the natural wine drinkers.
Yes.
Because I think, and this is maybe people that are listening are tired of hearing me talk about this, I think that it's worthy of note. And I think that while I don't like all of them, I really like some of them. And I feel like it's the same way as the rosé thing was. It's the same thing as the Pinot Noir thing was after Sideways. Yeah. It's just kind of like the next thing.
It's I'm not going to say cyclical because it's, orange
right.
wine.
Yeah.
Is or natural.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of saying orange, I'll say natural
wine.
Sure. It's a fairly new concept.
Yeah.
I don't, and very old at the same time.
Right.
I mean, you can't get away with saying that, but I have this love-hate relationship with natural wine.
Yeah.
I am one of those, I'm not going to say dyed-in-the-wool wine professionals, but sometimes I cannot just get into those wild aromas and flavors. Having said that, some of the best wines I've had are, Georgian that came from a Kaviri and, all these really cool old world wines that were made as low interventionally as possible.
Old school.
Yeah. They're doing something right. And then you get people who are trying to do that here with stainless steel fermenters and all that stuff. And, sometimes less successfully.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon. And like I said, like we talked about before, I think a lot of it is just our place and time, how we grew up. It's so subjective. Everything is also subjective. We have this whole rise of fermentation, kombucha. There are drinking vinegars. Yeah. So, of course, there is a very large percentage of the population for whom
they're okay with that flavor.
Yeah, that sort of, tasting vinegar in your beverage is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to get those things. I mean, I know that I've told the story and was finally validated by an article about smelling corkiness in baby carrots, because that's a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
There's TCA in baby carrots?
There is TCA in baby carrots.
And
not just baby carrots. All baby carrots.
No.
Yeah. And so you can look it up. You can look it up online. Somebody actually wrote an article about it. I think it was on either SF Gate or the Chronicle. And somebody did research and said that this new generation of drinkers grew up eating baby carrots. And so they're just used to that smell. And so when they smell it in wine, it's not a fault.
Holy shit. I haven't eaten a baby carrot in so long. I thought maybe I could pick it out.
It's coming. You're going to have baby carrots coming at you through school lunches and stuff.
That's true. Yeah, they're going to come home in the lunchbox.
It's literally every time I get near baby carrots, I'm like, cork.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I haven't put a lot of time into studying TCA in general. Like I feel like when I can smell it, I smell it. Yeah. When I don't, I don't.
I feel like you're more sensitive to it than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm not.
Right.
I can pick it out fairly well, but I'm not super sensitive to it.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to baby carrots and there's no like wine aromas, sort of making it more pleasant, I'm like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. All I smell is increased eyesight, right? Wasn't that always the thing? The more carrots I eat, the better my vision will be. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's funny. I've walked outside Press Club before, and it's not always, but before, I can't remember who I was with. We walked out of Press Club, and there's that little fountain right there. And I smelled it, and I go, that water smells like TCA.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all I could think was just
to clean it.
Jesus, it smells like...
Bleach is amazing, and yet it is a necessary component.
I guess that's
TCA.
A great point. Yeah, it helps. The TCA loves it.
Yeah, it's just, it's breaking down that chlorine and saying, it's like, come play with the rest of it. Yeah. 2,4,6 trichloroanisole. Let's make it smell nice in here. God. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. I think I'm excited to see kind of like where the natural wine thing kind of like plateaus and where it kind of develops. I'm excited. There's a lot of cool stuff out there, and there's a lot of interesting things out there. And, I really think that, to me, the hope is that what comes from this is the intention to be aware of what you're drinking.
I couldn't agree more.
I hope that, like, I drink natural wine isn't just a false flag that somebody's throwing up. Like, I drink natural wine, like I'm superior. I hope it's like I drink natural wine because I want to know where my wine comes from, and I want to know what's in it, and I want to know that it's made with integrity, and not that other wines that aren't made with integrity, but like that they're giving a fuck about what they're drinking.
Yeah.
And that's maybe just an easy catch-all for them.
Well, I mean, everyone thought that organic was going to be the next big thing. And, you know, most wineries have started labeling, you know, whoever does organic, even if they're not certified, it's like, you know, made with organic grapes, or, you know, they sort of call it out, you know, sustainable or whatever, you know, and those certifications are a pain in the ass and expensive and whatever. But, you know, I'm pretty sure we in the industry all thought that, well, yeah, of course everyone's going to gravitate to organic wine. And frequently these days, I feel like it's actually a sales negative. Like, people see it and be like, you know, I'm tired of this. John Bonet, who, you know, was at the Chronicle for a long time and then moved over to New York. He wrote an article, or I think it was him, sort of saying it's like, we pay so much attention to how our food is grown now. Why do we not pay that same amount of attention to the wine we drink? And okay, not to bash on Gen Z some more. But you know, and from your time out in the field these days as a sales rep and everything, you know, a lot of the new drinkers, and you know, I'm sure that we were, you know, each generation successively was the same. They drink crap wine. It's the cheap stuff, and it's not just like sweet. It's not like Bartles and James wine coolers, although, you know, it's, and it's not like
not MD 2020.
It's not.
I was 18. I was drinking MD 2020. I go like, I like wine,
and there are kids drinking that, but you know, there's so many people, and you know, not to bash brands or anything, but you know, Barefoot. Josh Sellers is like the big mid-tier one. There's a lot of people that are drinking a really large scale production wine with zero thought into, you know, how the grapes are grown, where, you know, where they're coming from. You know, and now there's that whole push for, you know, American wine, because so many wineries are blending in, you know, grapes or made wine from other countries. You know, there's the whole bulk blending thing.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's way cheaper.
It's way cheaper.
The perfect example is cava.
Yeah.
You can go to the grocery store. You can buy a bottle of cava that's made in the champagne method for $10. Or you could go buy champagne for $50. Your choice, right? Obviously, there's a difference in aging and
and the grapes used and all that stuff.
Right? Yeah. To defend the champagne, but also to give respect to the cava in the sense that
those cava producers are great. Yeah. But then, you know, I remember when I was first studying for WSET.
These are good mics. They won't pick it up.
Oh, it's all right. Well, I mean, who doesn't like hearing that? You know, just hearing about some of the really big cava producers too. I mean, it's just, you know, that's stuff that's made on the back of very cheap labor and very low economic pressure. So you can afford to make stuff like champagne. I mean, they cava, I think, really turned a corner a little while back, and it is a great value bubbly. I mean,
it's kind of with the rise of that Corpinat classification, right? That they're just like, all of a sudden you can't. People just got tired of getting lumped into the box with Anacadornu and Poema and stuff. Not that there wasn't a good time of those brands, and that there's not a good time of the future, and that like those brands, like if you're gonna have a mimosa, why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I would drink that, right? If I was at a friend's house and they're gonna pour it for me, I'd still drink it. It's still cava. Right. Like
quality of the bubbles. I mean, you can't beat that method traditional.
But like Raventos compared to Anacadornu, it's like night and day, right? So why wouldn't you want to be part of your own classification?
Yes,
it's like the IGT Super Tuscans, right? It's
once again,
it's
the
all
rules
this thing.
Don't allow for that sort of innovation, and so you to hell with it.
So fuck you.
Exactly. Basically,
Gotta
love that.
Gotta love it. Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what comes as far as the future of the wine industry, and
agreed.
And I think the best part is it'll feel like we're always learning, always adapting. And I love that about wine. I'll never know everything about wine, and that's my favorite part about it.
Yes.
Is that it's just like you can be a student of life, you can be a student of wine, or you could be a student of both.
We know how
I'm mostly just wine, but
we know how little we know. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to call it the Myers-Briggs. I keep spacing. There's a chart. And anyways, it's like the more you know of when you first get into something, and it's like you get up and it's like the mount of stupidity, trough of despair, or like valley of despair. And then you kind of like stabilize. But yeah, it's one of those things.
Yes. My lack of knowledge astounds me to this day.
The more I know, the less I know.
Yes.
The more I know that the less that I know. Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you before we get near to wrapping things up is you're in the sales side of things now.
Yes.
You've had an extensive hospitality background.
Yes.
Do you miss, this is always a two-sided question. You miss the hospitality
every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
I know.
But, you're always looking back through rose-tinted glasses.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, you
the future's always bright.
The future's always
past. The
past is always pleasant unless it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was truly amazingly horrendous, that's what you're going to pull out of it, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I have lived a charmed life.
Yeah.
And so I look back on my days and it's like, wow, that was a lot of fun. I love doing that. That's great. When you get to go to a table and pour this, one of your pet wines, and everybody gets it and loves it, and that's and it's such a great pairing. It's like, that feeling is amazing.
Yeah.
And as a bartender, as a somm, I didn't have very many of those asshole customers.
Yeah.
There was no stump the bartender, no stump the somm, no, and most people have those experiences. And I very thankfully and luckily had very few of those.
Mm-hmm.
So I can look back and be like, oh yeah, I was walking at least 10 miles a night, just walking around a single dining room, or, running back and forth behind the bar, trying to make as many cocktails as possible. That's all fun. I mean, for the longest time, I could sort of live as an adrenaline junkie without doing anything really crazy.
True. Yeah. And feel good about making people feel good.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the heart of it, working with alcohol is about bringing joy to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But then, you get into petty things,
sure.
And you sort of forget about that. Yeah. And the hours, 2 kids, a very understanding wife.
But a wife that was more of a 9 to 5. It's like 2 ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
Basically. Right? Like how long can you do it?
Which is great when you have a newborn.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But that's about the extent of it. After that, it's,
you guys want to
really
spend time
rough.
together.
Yeah.
Time becomes the most valuable resource.
And that's really, at this point in my career and life, that's where I'm at. And honestly, I'm not sure I could handle the physical rigors of doing a 12-hour bartending shift or whatever these days. I mean, obviously I could work myself back into shape, but just jump back there now. Like I still to this day go to bars. I'm like, okay, I do that differently.
Yeah,
why is that person doing it like that?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, man, really look like they need some help. I could just jump back there.
That's so funny.
And then I'm like feeling my elbow going, I would shake 2 cocktails and my elbow would be just barking at me.
Yeah.
My knees hurt now and I'm not even standing back there. It's, you romanticize that stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
I miss it every day.
Yep.
It would take a lot to get me back there.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Yeah. I think that's how I feel. And, my daughter's 1.5 years. Like she's walking, she's talking. I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
And obviously she has to be in daycare. So we're missing some.
Yeah.
But
that's natural. I mean, they're always going to be in daycare or school.
And getting the weekends together, like it would also be hard to get an industry job where I was off on Saturdays and Sundays. And, and San Francisco's not inexpensive. So then is there a way to scale it without taking more shifts, right? Like if if I need to make more money, I have to work more nights. And then all of a sudden I'm 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week because I just need to pay the bills. And it's wild. It's a different world. But
it is for sure. Well, I mean, pre-pandemic, back in the heyday, true. I mean, I always used to say, so, you know, I had the good fortune to work in one of the quote unquote holy grail jobs of San Francisco, bartending. You know, any of those hotel bar gigs is just crazy, which is why you run into so many people who are like 30-year veterans. The other holy grail jobs I always thought were the day shift bartenders at all these sort of fancy restaurants downtown in the financial district, where you have these, you know, bankers and people with money coming in, 3 martini lunches. You just you get pounded for 2-3 hours. And, you know, you come in at like, what, 9-10 to set up, leave by like 4-5.
Get your whole night ahead of you.
And because you were downtown, it was Monday through Friday. You know, some of those restaurants aren't even open on the weekends. That's I mean, true. So that would, when I was younger, I'd have been like, why would you do that? And now that I have kids, now that I'm so far removed from that, I'd be like, yeah, that's the gig.
That'd be the gig. Yeah. So much less responsibility. Like,
I mean, what are you even doing there? I mean, that would be amazing. But, you know, with the state of the city now, the state of dining, those restaurants don't exist because the clientele doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, I almost hope that if they remove these junk fees, that they at least like make coming back to the office more of a priority too, because at least there would be more business to be had. Right now we don't have business. Here, I'll pour you another.
Oh, well, thank you.
Just in case.
I was about to say I polished it off and
good. That's what it's there for.
It's tasty. Thank you.
Good, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like the next question is so we've talked about what hospitality means. So you miss hospitality. We all miss hospitality.
Right.
You know, I don't think when I was in it, I was like, I don't want to leave. I've always loved sales. I'm a little ADD. I like to be in a lot of different restaurants all at once. But what does hospitality mean to you?
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day,
do your best to you know, summarize it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's taking care of the people in front of you. Right. And that's necessarily, but not wholly focused at the customer. You know, the customer is the raison d'etre of a restaurant or bar, of an establishment, right? You are there to take care of the people who are indirectly paying for everything. And like I said, it's amazing to serve somebody and get it right and, you know, have them on the same page with you. And that's great. It's amazing to turn around somebody's crappy day. It's amazing to, you know, put the capper on a great day, you know, something celebratory.
Right.
We came out to this restaurant. You've made everything better. That's fantastic. That's why we're there. Right. But, you know, it's also about taking care of your coworkers. It's about taking care of the people who make it possible for you to do your job. You know, as a bartender, the bar back is essential.
Right.
You know, and the dishwasher and working at 8 tables. I mean, so much of it was making sure that the dishwashers could do their job and get out these beautiful dishes and glassware to plate and serve everything. And it is amazing how many restaurants operate like that. You know, it's just, it starts at what is considered to be the bottom. So for me, hospitality was doing what I could to help give everyone a good experience. You know, because in a perfect world, it's a well-oiled machine. All the cogs are spinning, everything's working. You know, and in that case, everyone should have a wonderful time. You know, and then you power through the situations where, you know, something's squeaky and something needs a little grease or something gets clogged or caught. You know, and it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week about The Bear, the TV show. And, you know, it's actually really funny. I was talking to someone last week especially the second season when Richie goes to work on the floor of a Michelin star restaurant, fine dining, and all the stuff that goes into making that experience special. And it doesn't, hospitality doesn't mean making it special necessarily, but everyone should feel welcome and everyone should feel taken care of.
Yeah.
However you get there.
That's perfect. Yeah. I don't think there's a roadmap for it.
No, and there never is.
No. Sometimes people come in. One of my favorite times is when people come in and they're in a shitty mood and you're able to turn their experience around and give them a good night. Whatever happened, James Lynn was the director of operation for Ozumo. He passed away, unfortunately, after the pandemic. And he used to always say, like, people walk in this door and they want to escape reality. They want to come here. It's your job to help them have a great time and feel like they're on a mini vacation and to make sure that they just enjoy themselves entirely, right? Like I always thought that was really well said. And I kind of try to always think about that every shift that I ever worked. Like,
yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite stories, can't remember if I've told this to you. I feel like I've told everyone this, but way back in the day, working at Asia de Cuba, service bar, but because it's a hotel restaurant, it was open 365 days a year, and so getting staffing on holidays sometimes sort of tough.
Can't imagine.
And you never know.
Thank God for the union.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Well, and as a hotel restaurant, it was open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner many of those years. And, not with, we weren't showing up diner hours to, serving cocktails at like 7 a.m. or anything. But I remember I worked a Thanksgiving day shift once. And, we didn't have, it was a weird shoulder period between lunch and dinner. And so we had cocktail service in the little lounge area off of the lobby. And so I'm in the back, the printer starts printing. I was like, shot of tequila, Corona. It's like, great, let's get, that's easy. Pour the shot, Corona, lime, done. Literally 5 minutes later, shot of tequila, Corona, comes back up. Okay, great, send it out. 2 minutes later, shot of tequila, Corona. I'm like, okay, what is going on out there? Like another 2 minutes later, shot of tequila, Corona. I'm like, I pull the cocktailer out and she comes back and I give it to her and be like, what is going on out there? Is it a party now? She's like, it's one guy. I'm like, really? And he's like, he's got to be pretty blasted by now. I'm be like, did you get what's going on with him? He's like, and she says, yeah, he's really nice. He's great. He's tipping great. He's just prepping to go to his in-laws.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That poor man.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's those things. Like he was not there to have a good time.
Yeah.
But we were there to help him.
The shelter in the storm.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Or, just some, I hope he had a really good Thanksgiving. To this day, I hope it worked out for him.
That's so funny. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's still one of my favorite stories.
I love that. Yeah. That's great. What do you think about the wine? You like the wine?
I like this wine quite a bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Of course. Yeah. I, as I mentioned before, I like to kind of just like pour the wine blind, relatively blind, because I just think it's fun to be able to just kind of chill and enjoy it.
Melville.
Yeah, this is the Block M.
Nice.
So there's a bit more intensity here. I always call these pygmy bushes because they're so small. They get just hammered with wind all the time. It's
2022. It feels a little bit older than that.
It feels like it has it. Yeah. It feels like it has a little bit of age to it. It is a contiguous block with terraces, which is another famous bottling that he does. Yep. Terraces is obviously terraced.
Yep.
And Block M is this little plateau that sits on top of it. And the bushes are like, the vines are like this tall, like really short, because they just like the grapes are small.
Yeah. Buffeted
it's sand
all the time.
It's windy as fuck.
Yeah.
It's a miserable existence for them, but thankfully for us, it makes great wine.
Yep. We are capitalizing on the suffering of those poor vines.
That's right. That's right. Well,
yeah.
Hardship breeds enlightenment.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we get to reap the benefit, I guess.
Yes.
Cool. Well, Tony Kim, is there any words of advice or any parting statement you'd like to make to our listeners?
Sadly, no.
No?
Yeah, there's not a lot of wisdom to impart. I mean, I've seen a lot of social media posts. I am basically off of social media these days.
Good. Probably for the best.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll get some sort of like notification that I feel must be addressed. And then I will spend a second sort of scrolling through. I've noticed recently that there is a vocal minority of people who are out there preaching kindness to others. Something I don't always adhere to myself, but I think that that's why I feel like it's good advice. I think that nobody knows what's going on with everyone else, so a little bit of kindness goes a long way. I think that I try to remember that in my own day-to-day existence, and I feel like that's something that everyone can always sort of have in their heart as they go out into the world.
Beautiful. That's perfect. That's knowledge. You're imparting knowledge on us. Well, Tony, thank you for everything. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your mentorship throughout my time in San Francisco. Thank you for connecting with people. Thank you for your kindness. I know it's challenging sometimes, not necessarily with me, but like we were talking about, it's just challenging in general to always be kind. And it's not that you're always kind. None of us are always kind, but it's about trying. And I think you do a damn good job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining.
It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Oh, that's a good sound.